put together a great presentation. We're calling this Realistic Tips for Educators Using Online Learning. And I wanted to give Julia a moment to just give us a brief update on the state of education. Julia, why don't you update us on that?
Well, the state of education, I mean, people are still frantically trying to figure out how to continue to make the pivot, right? Schools are still uncertain all over the country as to what exactly is going to happen. It's probably going to be a little bit of a hybrid model for most, both on the secondary level and higher education, where they may be doing partially in person, partially remote. And, the key here is that flexibility is at the heart of all of that. So adopting the technology, learning it, figuring out the best way to keep students engaged, that's really where we're at.
It's true. And there's a big difference between online learning, blended learning, and in-class learning. In the spring of 2020, we saw a mid-semester transition from in-class to totally online. You could call that blended learning, but it's more of a massive switch and change. Drake, we've talked a little bit about, what that was like. There were obviously mistakes made from everybody, right? Nobody's perfect. But this year, we have the ability, I'm missing my slide here, but we have the ability, we're going right into fall knowing what's going to happen, right? At least in a way, we're a lot better prepared. This is not going to be a midsummer transition. We're going to come prepared for a blended learning environment. Would you say that's accurate?
I'd say that's very accurate. We're sitting there right now in an area where we've made our mistakes. We've done the accidental, no passwords on the Zoom calls. We didn't set up expectations. It was just, okay, who's going to show up? Who do I have today? Now, as we gear into it, because we did take one day's work and make it into a week long. Now we're going to go back to the old formula. It's going to be day by day. It's going to be very interactive. You're going to have, because we stumbled through it in some areas, we're now got to move a more smoother path. So like I said, this is a mid-semester. We've had all summer. It'll be a little refresher course. It's going to be different. This wasn't in any of the books they gave us as first-year teachers. But now it's trial by error, and now it's time to get down to business into fall, which a lot of my students are actually excited about. They want to really hunker down and get back to what education was.
Well, that is optimistic and really sounds good. I don't mean that in a bad way. I think that what you're doing is amazing. If you were my teacher in high school and I saw this in my Zoom call, I would be excited. And I don't care if you were teaching math or you were teaching, anything. This is obviously your virtual set situation here. We're not going to go into the super details of how Drake uses vMix with virtual sets and green screen backgrounds to do this. I think that's out of the ballpark of, a normal maybe classroom setup. But Drake, you're doing a lot of amazing things here. We have some pictures of you, grading classwork using a document camera, which I do think is in the realm of normalcy of what the new online learning is going to be. We have some pictures here of you using how the market works, using basically online tools to keep students engaged beyond just your Google Classroom, which I understand you're also using, and I think to a full extent. So we wanted to start with a tip that you gave us, Drake, which is don't be afraid, try anything. So can you explain, this high level kind of let it sink in with what you're talking about here?
Okay, when I sit there and say, don't be afraid to try anything, regretfully, teachers, we are creatures of habit. We find something we like and we're comfortable with it, and we do it year after year after year. I mean, when I was doing 5th grade history, I was teaching out of the same history book for so long, I didn't open it my last 8th or 9th year teaching it because I knew it so well. But now with technology, I know things happening with Kahoot, with all the different tools out there, you got to try everything because you don't know what's on the other side of the screen. You don't know what your student is engaged with and what they can use or what they're going to embrace. Some are going to be on the laptop at home. Some are going to be on a full desktop. Some only have a cell phone. So all these different aspects and avenues, it's not just as simple, you're going to sit with me for an hour and we're going to go over this word by word. You've got to try different things. Kahoot was a great tool. And at first, I was scared of Kahoot 2 years ago. I won't lie. It was actually my daughter that sat there and said, "No, this is how you do it, and this is how you get your kids to love it." And that's, give everything a try. Worst thing that happens, you laugh with the students and go, "That didn't work at all." And sometimes they need that as well.
My middle schooler absolutely loves Kahoot, and she
Mhm.
mentions that quite a bit. So I think that's important too, is to, tap your audience, right? Find out
Exact
what they like.
Exactly, and they've got the cell phones right there. They're able to touch into it. They're able to interact in real time, and I mean that's easier than sitting there going, "Okay, even on a Zoom call, give me hands up," because then they're looking around. If they got their cell phone with them, embrace what they've got in their hands.
Well, I think that is super smart. And your next tip is just like in a classroom, don't hesitate to set guidelines and expectations of behavior, but also understand that things will change quickly. So, again, I think this tip is really preparing everyone for this is a transformation. We are at the beginning of a bell curve, if you will. And you're just trying to prepare people to say, things are going to change and it's going to be kind of quite quickly.
Yeah, I had juniors and seniors in my math and money class, and at first my expectations were, you guys are going to show up. Yeah, you're going to be on your cell phone. You're going to be whatever, but it's going to be one-on-one with me. And then I had a student that showed up and called me from his bed. And when I found out why, it turned out that because of the lockdown, he had to pick up an extra job to help mom and dad. So he was exhausted because he had just worked from, I think it was 4 in the afternoon till about 7, 8 a.m. He pulled a graveyard shift just to help mom and dad. And so that one was with me. I'm like, okay, I got to ease back. I can't expect everybody to be right and attentive and right on the Zoom call. And if it means that they're having lunch or something because that's the only time they can eat and attend my class, I've got to adapt for that.
Well, that's a perfect example and one that really puts things in perspective because these are, uncertain times for the parents. I'm a parent and I'll just say this. My kids don't know about COVID-19. I have a 4-year-old and a 3-year-old, and I just don't think they're prepared for it. And I don't think we need, because that's a big topic. I don't think we have to jump into that. But, I'm sure that you have your stories all the time, all over the map. It's a stressful time for parents. It's a stressful time for kids. So it seems like being aware of that is important.
Yeah, and it was the kids that really jumped up and were that willing to help the parents. That's ones I had to make the exceptions for, because I can't sit there and go, no, my schoolwork's more important than you paying your bills. So we had to meet in the middle.
Yeah. Well, that's very important for sure. This is one that comes from your video background, Drake, and I love this tip. For me, it makes a lot of sense. I want to hear it from you. B-roll video clips can be used to capture the attention and break up that long hour lecture. Give us some examples, and where are you getting this B-roll?
The B-roll I just found off of YouTube or LinkedIn or anything that I could tie into it, or it was even just a little breather in there, something, because in the classroom, I'm one of those teachers. I'll walk around, I'll lecture, I'll be going, but I'll throw a joke or something in there in between, just to get a little breath, just to get them to engage a little bit more, and not having that ability. Instead, I went with the B-roll clips, and it all started because I started doing Motivational Monday while we were still in session, where I take some Motivational Monday clips. And on the second Zoom week, um, I got emails from my kids going, "Where was our Monday clip? Where was our Monday clip?" So instead of just putting it out there, I put it into the presentation, and it brought the attendance up, and a lot of them showed up on time to make sure that they got to see it. And it meets them at their level. They've already got their devices. They're able to see it. Why not bring them something that you want them to see and you want them to learn?
Can you give us an example of a motivational Monday clip?
Uh, um, I guess I just hit YouTube, hit Motivational Monday. It's the ones about never giving up, and that's where I really felt they tied into the situation.
Mm-hmm.
No matter how the world feels, how it's down about you, a lot of, well, because my background in sports also, I took a lot where Vince Lombardi, Muhammad Ali, all these great people. Yeah, it's put together with music and clips of the things. I even started to edit and chop in clips of our own high school sports into these big ones, just because I wanted to have that connection with them of this applies to you as well.
I absolutely love it, and this is something that I'm hoping to dig into more, because you have so much great stuff. We can't spend too much time on B-roll, but you can download it from YouTube. You can go to YouTube. You can create your own videos. I think in this modern world, as an educator, it's important to take your phone out and record things and show homemade videos. Maybe you have a GoPro. Maybe you have footage from the school. Drake, you mentioned using pictures. I think we're going to get to a slide where you pictures of your old classroom as your background. All kinds of stuff like that.
Well, and even the B-roll behind me right now for the virtual set, that's all pictures as the screens go by of the students of the sports activities from last year. So, just anything that the kids can get that connection to.
Yeah, it's such great advice, and we could literally have a whole webinar just on that, and we might just do that. So don't forget to subscribe and stick around, because I think it's really important. But this one, high level, taking time to listen. Students will tell you what they need, and sometimes you, as an educator, you used to be the one, consistent in their lives, and that may be exactly what they need right now. They need you to listen.
Yeah, that hit home really hard in different areas, because there were some students that, during these kind of came out and said, look, I saw you more than I saw my parents. And they wanted the advice, they wanted the tips from me. And sometimes it was they just wanted to rant about how, especially the seniors, because this was changing their lives. They wanted to let me know that they're unhappy. They didn't want a solution. They didn't want anything. They just wanted Mr. Finney to shut his mouth and listen and kind of connect with them emotionally. So.
Yeah, and that's that emotional intelligence side of things. As an educator, your job is to usually, curate the IQ side, right? And the right brain and the left brain. But many times, it's so important to remember that we all are emotional, and there's an emotional intelligence required for this.
Yeah, there's an EQ that goes with that IQ also, that especially when people sit there and say because of technology we're becoming disconnected, that I made sure I tried to connect with the ones that were going, hey, do you have time just to take a call? And I made time.
One thing, and Julia, I don't know if you've read about this at all, but I know you read the news a lot, so I figured I'd ask you. A lot of people are saying one thing that comes out of pandemics, comes out of COVID-19, is greater empathy for our fellow human beings. And it seems to be universal that people are more empathetic at this point.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I don't go through a social media post each day without seeing something about, somebody trying to visit a grandparent or a parent at a nursing home facility. And the gentle reminder for us all to think about others when it's time to wear the mask. Not necessarily, people don't always want to wear their masks. And, we see a lot of kind of commotion around that these days. But I think overall that there's been a greater awareness of our fellow humans, and we're all supposed to be in this together, right? And but we all have different health concerns, and we have different backgrounds. So absolutely, I think it's a time for building that dialogue and that engagement.
Now, our next one does hit on a more positive benefit of technology, which is these technology tools can provide instant feedback, and it can either happen through Google Classrooms, it can happen through email. There's tools like ZipGrade, Google Forms that will grade a majority of the work for you, and it comes back quickly. And you might be surprised how fast it returns and corrections are made. It really leads to a paradigm shift, and I'm interested to hear from you, Drake, on this, that teachers are able to do more from a assessment side, things more quickly. So it becomes less about that one big test and more about instant assessments, and therefore the students are you've got more of a guide on their research, on their learning projects, as opposed to a instructor, if you will. And so you can spend more time as a mentor and allowing them to kind of take a little bit more of a direct role in the learning process. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, when technology hit like this, and because I was one that, being a math teacher, you have to keep watching what's exactly happening, because what you learned today was built off the foundation you learned yesterday. And with 180, 200, students, it was one of, okay, how do I go through all of these things quickly and get it back to them in a timely form? Well, Google Forms was great for that. You make a multiple choice test or something like that. And people say you can't do math on multiple choice. Yes, you can. You just have to figure out how to do the answer wrong 3 times, like they're going to do it. But it can be done. ZipGrader is a great tool. It's actually on your phone. And what it is it's a Scantron that gives you all of the details, all of the things. It even shows you what was the most missed question, how many students missed it. It breaks it down. It gives you tons of analytics. And so when I started embracing those, it was one of, okay, how exactly am I going to, make this work and engage more with the students? They like that instant feedback. They like that because then it opens up the questions of, okay, well, what did I do wrong? How did I fix this? As opposed to me going home, taking 2 or 3 days to grade 180 papers and get it back to them. By then, we're already past that concept. This instant feedback to the student allowed them to engage. And a lot of them looked at me and said, can I fix this? And my answer was yes. I mean, you want to go back and redo it and get the answer right? I'm going to give you credit for it. And a lot of teachers are now gearing towards that because now, again, you can just regrade with the ZipGrade or the Google Forms, the object again, and keep building on it until finally you go, okay, here's where the disconnect is. And then the light bulb goes on and the student's going to have success.
Yeah, and I have a book here. I actually left it outside, but I'll just reference it. It's called the Online Learning Survival Guide. And I was reading from it and learning a lot from it. And one of the things that it says in there is that it's so amazing with new technology is that students can have something called, a continuous, or they can go back, continuous starts. So they can go back and start over at their own time as many times as they want. And that really is in line with the liberal education where this is not it. It's okay. It was a different one. This is the Online Meeting Survival Guide. There's a new one out there. Don't worry about it. The Online This is someone else's book, but there's too many books here. I apologize. But it's this notion that we were moving away from 2 major exams to continuous testing and instant feedback. And therefore, students can go back and restart, and they should be encouraged to, because that's more in line with real world, doing the research yourself, having to go through that and until it gets done.
I saw my grades on the average student bounce a full letter grade up with the ability to do ZipGrade in Google Forms and do those mini assessments building up to the big one. Once they had gotten their feet under that, I mean, we're talking, I don't want to say it'd be hard to fail my class, but if you're willing to give the effort, I had students that said mine was the first class they passed, because they wouldn't give up, and they wouldn't give up, which was the key thing that I jumped on. I was like, well, take that on to life with you.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're learning. And some of this stuff isn't new. The new thing is that everyone's doing this. Teachers and schools have been studying online education for years, but it's becoming, now everyone needs to connect with it.
It's interesting too to see if there will be studies that as a result of this, because there's almost, it's like an almost instant gratification, right? Mm-hmm. Because you're learning, you're able to self-correct. And I think that creates like certain like memory, because there's not this period of time between the information presented to you and really fully digesting it and able to, I don't want to say spit it back because it's not necessarily memorization, but I think that's going to create better learning over time.
Yeah, and to give ZipGrade a shameless plug, for unlimited scans via your cell phone and unlimited printouts, it's only $6.99 for the year. And I think right now they're doing a 2-for-1 special. So, it's one that when I started doing that, my students just absolutely jumped on it. And if I didn't ZipGrade something, they'd look at me and go, really? You got to hand grade that one? So...
It's interesting. And here it is here, this Online Teaching Survival Guide, a book that I'm reading as we do all of these, meetings with teachers. This is an invaluable tool for educators. And it's funny because it's been out for quite a long time. This has been something that's been studied for many years. And I'm trying to get to the part where it says here, here it is. Learners are more active and direct with their own learning experiences. Learning environments have shifted and content resources are more flexible, virtual, and infinite. And here's the part here. Assessment is continuous. Assessment in online courses should be continuous, multi-phased, with community input, rather than what it used to be, episodic, concentrated, and focused on individual faculty dialogue. The other part here that I really like is in online and blended course design, students also get to know themselves as learners. And most online course assessments, they're not closed book tests here. So we're not, that's a big change where it's like, it's okay to do research. It's okay. So these assessments in online and blended courses are a little bit lower stakes, automated quizzes, more frequent. And so there's just some ideas there. But I think you're right on with that assessment, Drake, and I'm glad we put it in here. Now, your next one is connecting with the parents as well. And this is something especially the younger students, but it seems like all the way through, I'd say K through 12 for sure. Tell us about your experience here.
This is one that, believe it or not, gets the most pushback from teachers, connecting with the parents. There is, you'll hear teachers joke that, education would be great if we didn't have to deal with the parents. And I know a lot of them are going to go, oh, don't give that out. But anyways, we joke about that in the lounge. And it's because there's a level of expectation that the parent has, that the parent usually doesn't get to give a voice of, this is what I want for my child or I need for my child, unless there's a special meeting or special cases that involve the kid's education. But, the normal parent needs to get that out as well. And especially during this situation, it was great for teachers to reach out to the parents and go, okay, this is what we're doing. Because I know of a father of 3 teenagers right now. If I ask them what's going to happen at the dinner table, 2 of them are going to look at me and go, nothing. We didn't do anything at school today. It was nothing big. The other one's going to talk my ear off until I go to bed. So the teachers need to reach out to the parents and go, this is what we're doing with your students. This is what we're bringing to them. This is what we're trying to attempt. And a lot of time we had to look at them and say, look, we're waiting for the state board to tell us what to do, or we're waiting for approval for this. If for nothing else, that they could see that we were just as frustrated with them on this situation as we were trying to work through all this all. And that actually helped. So I started sharing my PDFs. I started sharing my lectures. I started sharing any videos I had, so the parent could engage with the kid and get that extra, level of support that normally we wouldn't get in the classroom. And I saw it work very well. In fact, even one kid was at the dinner table watching my lecture, and the kid dad told him to put his cell phone away, and then we saw it opened up a conversation. So, as we go online, we've got to tell the parents where we're going as well with it, because this is an education they never had access to.
That's a great point. And I think that I would say it becomes even more important the younger students are. So my kids are in pre-K, kindergarten, first grade area. And, those students, if there's a parent not sitting down with them, first of all, they technically can't get into Zoom. They can't actually, do a lot of this stuff without a parent there. So as you get older, they get more responsible, and the parenting dynamic changes. But I think pretty much applies to anyone in education who is living with their parents. They should be connected, and it will help.
Yeah, it does greatly. And I remember back when my kids were in kindergarten, I sat down with them and we did the ABC chant. Just because it went online doesn't mean that needed to stop. Parents, if we send a video of a chant like that, sit down with your kids and do it with them. A parent engaged with a student at any level of their education is priceless.
Yeah, and I remember a book that I wrote called Esports in Education. A lot of kids are playing video games, and a lot of parents that is foreign to them. But yet you look at the studies, and parents playing video games with their kids is actually a great thing. You're not going to stop them from playing video games. Why not be a positive influence? So it really spans the spectrum. You should be engaged with your children throughout many different aspects, really. So here we have, this is another one, is try out Outclassed Crafts for some friendly competition. This is a cool one, Drake. I understand you've been trying it in your own class, and then you want to start bringing it on a class-to-class level in your school.
Yeah, we had just broke into it. I had a fellow teacher who did Classcraft, and I mean, I was a Warcraft kid all through college and everything. So when I heard Classcraft could incorporate that gaming element with the students, and Classcraft is really up their game. They've got mini lessons and mini quizzes that are just kind of like side adventures. And what happened with my kids, because I was talking to them about it in the third quarter before we went on spring break, and they're like, "Oh, great, Finney's got another crazy idea." And then all of a sudden I looked at him, I said, "But hey, if you get enough points, you can unlock pets." And I threw it up on the screen, and the whole class, guys, gals across, were like, "We get pets," and that was the buy-in. And then when I started talking about them, what my vision was to go on to it, which we didn't get to do because we didn't go back in fourth quarter. But I stole the idea from a teacher, because I have the only two-story building in the campus, and he was below me, and he would have points, and they would take over the world based on their quizzes points and get stuff. So the kids, knowing I like fantasies, they're like, well, can we tie it into some fantasy worlds? So I had my wife with her Cricut start, designing like Narnia and Mordor and Azeroth, and every period's going to get their own land, and I'm going to have it to be where once one group controls the whole land, then they can start invading the other classes. And that was actually brought to me by my freshmen because they wanted to take on the seniors, and I'm looking forward to it. And the great thing is it's another activity they can do outside of the classroom on their own that's going to increase their learning as well as increase that interaction with the material, which, that's how many times you used to hear teachers in our days go, if I could just get a kid to pick up a book. Well, it's on your cell phone, it's on your computer. I'm going to put my materials in front of you.
Well, and I wanted to ask you on the flip side of that, it's so amazing. How does that translate online? This seems like something that could translate quite well. You were doing it in your classroom. Is it possible to do this when everyone's at home?
Yeah, Classcraft actually is online, and it's one that will be more used now as in home. Once I actually get a letter out there and tell the kids what it's going to be. Like I said, fourth quarter, I was planning to do this one-on-one. This is going to be more of a supplemental, but it'll be one where I'll be able to have the class website, and they'll be able to see where they're at, and they'll be able to see what's happening, and they'll be able to see almost in real time what their quizzes, their scores, and all that do for each other. And the nice thing about Classcraft is as you put them in their small groups, it's got that MMO mentality where you've got a tank, a healer, things like that. So they actually will get benefits from helping each other out. Little Johnny might have done bad on the test, but Susie and his group did good. Well, Susie can shift some of her Classcraft points to help him get the ability to do it again, or to try some answers, or use her as a resource. It's going to almost like tribe mentality with them a little bit, get them to work together to, succeed as a group, not just, the one in their desk. And that's where I like where Classcraft has a chance to go to it. You'll hear from me throughout the year, next year, the trial by error, I'm sure.
I know. Well, I can't wait to hear how it turns out. I mean, this is something I remember. Some of the things that I was most engaged with were the things like when you were talking a little bit about your class where it's how the market works, where you actually, even though it was fake stocks, you get to track them. And those were some of the things that I remember the most and was most engaged with, because at least there was something there where it was engaging and interactive. And this is similar. It's like real world. And it's very similar and synergetic to the video games they're already playing. So I'm sure it fits in quite nicely. Well, that's awesome.
Exactly.
The next one we have here, this actually comes from your daughter, which I'm so happy that we had some student perspective here. But what I think happens, and this is something that we should address, is that you have these big Zoom meetings and a lecture happens, and there's some students who aren't comfortable asking a question or putting themselves out there in front of a large group setting. But teachers are learning, well, if I can offer a one-on-one, students will open up more, and it's more productive for some folks. Is that what you've kind of seen out there?
That's what I've seen also myself, and that's, like I said, when my daughter chimed in with this and just took I asked for ideas, she just took my phone. So, and it gave you that long list, a diatribe. But what it was she was one that, because she was at the calculus level, she's at the AP level. So while not wanting to bog the class time down as they're covering the other stuff, her teachers were giving that one-on-one Zoom session. And even though it was just 15, 20 minutes, it gave them something to where, okay, I didn't want to interrupt you here. I didn't want to stop the class here. Or in my case, with some of my students, when I did a few one-on-ones, it was a straight, I didn't know how to ask this question, but I'm stuck with this, which was also great with cams because they'd hold the question right up to the camera. So that one-on-one, that almost quiet time, the kids were more interactive with it than even my office hours at the school where they could come in and ask the question. So having your Zoom session and then offering that, hey, I'll stick around, or hey, I'll have one-on-ones afterwards if you need to come and talk to me. They were golden to many students because it helped them get out of their shell and risk the question they didn't want to ask in public.
It's a great point, Drake, especially too. We're working with a higher ed instructor, Christine Hagedorn, who you've met in past streams here. She mentioned about the anxiety factor. So that is something that it does not just affect, tweens and teens, also into the older adult population. People have a lot of social anxiety and they don't necessarily want to go out there and ask a question that may be perceived as dumb.
Yeah.
A bunch of people. So
yeah, back when I was at college, Dr. Weldon, great professor who regretfully just passed away from ASU, told us in our class when I had a question, because I got some of the looks of, well, what kind of question was that? And he stopped the class and he said, for every one person that asks a question, there's 10 more that are thinking it. And the thing is even with the social, with the Zoom meetings and all that, you're looking at a lot of screens that feel like they're looking right at you. It's as opposed to a classroom where you're kind of blended in with everyone looking out. So like my daughter said, this allowed her to talk one-on-one with the teacher without 50 faces looking back at her.
I never thought of it like that, but it's true. That is kind of, it's a sad fact that, it looks like everyone's looking at you, whether they may or may not even truly be looking directly at you. It feels like that. Here's one that ties along nicely with that, which is check in with students via email. I remember reading this in, again, the online teaching survival guide that we've learned. As faculty members shift their role, again, to more coaching, guiding, and mentoring in this newer digital 21st century environment, there's less telling on the part of the instructor. It's more, rather than preparing a 15-minute lecture, instructors prepare short concept introductions, concept-focused discussions, and monitor discussions, manage student interactions, and support student creative work. And with that being said, it can't all happen in the Zoom call that you have or the Google Meet call. So checking in provides that touch point. And so you added this here. I'm guessing that's been very effective for you.
Yeah, and the thing is the grade systems out there that schools are using make it very easy to email. I mean, you literally just click the student, you click contact, and it opens it up for the email to reach out to them. And if it's after a lecture, if you saw someone that looked a little disconnected, just a little reach out and going, hey, just checking, seeing how you are, or did you have any further questions? It'll either open up what was going on with them that they need to talk about, or it might be, yeah, I got lost at that, can you re-explain it? Which is either you do it via email or you turn around and open Zoom back up again and do that one-on-one.
Julia, you mentioned this a little bit, I believe, when you were reading into some of the tips for educators. Email's one of the great touch points. Obviously, there's phone calls, and then there's
Right.
messages directly through the learning management system, and it provides, a little bit more. It's more about that personal touch point.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, one of the four tips that provided by Edutopia about supporting learning at home are, to those individual touch points being game changers, including, what Drake just mentioned, emails, video messages, phone calls, messages through learning management system, even comments on shared documents, kind of creates that one-on-one vibe that let's face it, teachers are busy, students are busy, they're shifting to online. There's a lot of faces staring at you in a Zoom session, like Drake mentioned. So individual touch points are key.
Now, and I think this is going to come up to another thing that you said, but let's start with this one. Dr. Harry Wong, an influential person that Drake wanted us to go into, said, if you see something that works, steal it. Incorporate something fun. Maybe you saw it on TV. Maybe you can bring that into your class's Zoom channel. That could be playing around with virtual backdrops, giving a student a sense of familiarity, maybe with a picture of a school hallway. So I like this because it applies to so much, Drake. Basically, you see something that you like, bring it in and incorporate it. And now that we're talking about online learning, we're talking about media, right? Pictures, videos, documents, websites, things like that. Is that what we're getting at?
Yeah, that's exactly what we're getting at, and that's exactly why I even changed my background right now. This is actually the hallway at the high school, and when I saw that, my chat just blew up with, are you actually there? Are we back in session? And it got that excited again. And Harry Wong was great, and if you haven't read his books, I would suggest if you're an educator, go out. Some people say they're a little dated, but great information can never go wrong. And as you said, if you see something, steal it. I saw the picture of the hallway online. I stole it. I saw my mentor, Mr. Strom, using the dot cam. That's where I stole the idea to bring that into it. It if you see something, and you can give credit if you want to the people you stole it from or not, but Dr. Wong was always like, and he admitted it, that his first few years he saw something like he just stole it. He would make the whole audience say steal it. Because if it's going to work, if it works in one classroom and it's going to work in yours, take it right away, use it with the kids. They're going to benefit from it. And it's only, you were here to do what's best and right for the kids. And
At the very least, it's a conversation icebreaker, right? You could say, "Hey, who has a sandwich still in their locker?" One of the things that I heard many teachers talk about was the fact that they had to pack up, several months after the shutdown, pack up, the desks of their students. Still had snacks in there. I mean, when we got our daughter's things back from school, there was a little plastic bag with crushed chips in it. I said, well, they could have really thrown that away, but it was sort of a sign of the times of how, everything just abruptly stopped. So
yeah, that's very true. And even my wife, because she was hands-on with her fashion design classes, we spent a good 3 days out in the parking lot handing out their projects that they didn't get to finish. But it was one that, I actually was jealous as an educator a little bit because I was math. I only had papers to give them. With all of her projects, there were stories, there were yeah, goals that were met. Students that couldn't sew were now all of a sudden making quilts, and they're going, well, I'm gonna go finish this at home. And it was neat.
So, Drake, this next point you sent over makes so much sense. It's really kind of a reality check in some ways. Students always want to be on their devices. It's 5 minutes before they leave the door, boom, they're on their devices. And you know this as a high school teacher. What are some of the tips that you can use online learning to help kind of recapture a little bit of that attention that might be going directly to TikTok, for example?
Well, and that was one where, first off, because cell phones do get to be an issue sometimes in the classroom, I have little pockets that they can put them up there, and I did attendance by that. And and then occasionally they would walk over and see that there's a piece of candy in there. oops, don't know how it got there. You put your cell phone away, you get the candy for it. The ones that didn't, they wondered why their friends were eating candy. Uh, but they always wanted, because they're high schoolers, they're so in touch and in interacting with each other that they would be willing to do anything that last 5 minutes just to get their cell phone and be able to use it. So I'd back it up about 10 minutes and go, okay, there's a little mini lecture, or there's something I want you to put in your own words that we discussed today. And once you do that, then you can go ahead and jump onto your social medias if you want. And it was one I didn't have to police. I didn't have to sit there and look over, Johnny's head and go, okay, make sure you do it first, because like Google, I get that instant notification when they would send something in, or if it was ZipGrader, they'd bring it up, I'd scan it, it'd be done. Then they had the access to their devices. So it was a great way to sit there and go, all right, I know you're going to be on the device anyways. Let me put my education a little bit more out there for you. And then you can touch on it. And that came from my first principal that I had even before tech was this big into it, how long I've been teaching. But when I was a fifth grade teacher, I had a very active class, we'll say it. And he looked at me and he goes, sometimes they're like wild horses, because he used to be a rancher. He said, to be successful, you got to find out where they want to go. You get on your horse and you get in front of them and you lead them there. And I realized when I was dealing with tech and I'm going, that's all I care about is getting on there. I was like, okay, well, how do I get in front of it? Google Classroom was a great tool for that.
I think it's so smart, and it's something that I don't know if we touched on, but sometimes it really is the little things and the extra effort that a teacher does that really makes the difference in a student's life. So this is a tip that I think anybody can take away. And as you know, this is just a fact, right? Students want to use technology on the whole, and as a teacher, you found a way to get your lessons on technology where they wanted to be. And I love the analogy that you used. And here it is here. I knew that came from somewhere. This is your tip, Drake. Teachers that do the little things.
This actually was a quote from a senior when I was heading out to PAX-U to work with Roxley Games for the weekend. And I knew they were going to have a sub. They were griping about a sub. I don't know why they griped when I was there. They griped when I was gone. They're kids. They're supposed to do that. But it was one that in the airport, because I had a 2-hour layover in Denver, I went to a Starbucks. We were doing unit pricing. So I just took out the camera and I made a quick mini quiz about how much per ounce my drink actually cost. And this was what one of the students wrote back to me. Because as you said, he goes, I learned more from your Starbucks video than I actually learned from the substitutes lecture today. So, and that's he phrased it like that. And I went, wow, I need to do more of this, which that was back in November. And it like I said, I got lucky just starting the curve before this hit.
Well, and it keeps, things that keep coming to mind because here we are, we've been talking for 45 minutes. All of these things deserve a deep dive. One of the things I think teachers can do a lot more of, and I mentioned, keep a camera in your pocket. Your phone is a camera. You could have a GoPro, but like you said, the short clips that are outside at a Starbucks or somewhere that bring context, that's what we're attracted to on user-generated content on social media, on YouTube and Facebook. And you better believe these kids are in that generation where they're watching it. To see it from a teacher brings them back into that, oh my gosh, I like this, I enjoy this, this is interesting. That maybe, let's be honest, a lot of these kids, they want to be a YouTube star, right? They want to be a professional video gamer. Some of the elements that make those people famous on YouTube and great social media stars, it is that they're showing behind the scenes who they are from different angles and different things. And it's a stretch for every teacher to become a vlogger. But like you said, a short little clip from Starbucks, it's like, oh, I thought my teacher just was a talking head next to a picture-in-picture of a screenshot. Now I see, her backyard or his or her backyard or something. And it's just, it makes it more memorable.
It makes it memorable, and you get little engagements, because I forgot another one who kind of is the yin yang to this student, sent me the message back, on a teacher's salary, how do you afford Starbucks? I was like, ouch, but it showed me that the student was already thinking at a different level about politics. So I'm going, okay, so that Starbucks video it was such a great accident that I did.
I love it. I love it. And it makes so much sense to me. I'm a content creator, right? I create a lot of videos and it makes a lot of sense to me. I'm hoping that through the course of doing these videos and following, we're really going to try to work with educators that we're going to talk about that more. It deserves more time, but we don't have right now. 80% of the interaction with a teacher from a student will be on a smartphone, only using a computer for more detailed work like presentations and papers. But even when they were showing what they could do on a phone, it blew you away. This is something that's, again, a modern times kind of thing. 5 years ago,
Yeah.
10 years ago, I don't think every student had a smartphone. Today, it impresses us what they're doing with a smartphone so much, you can't even tell if they did it with a computer or a smartphone because it looks like so incredible, right?
Yeah, and that's what I got blown away with. And I've got, because of all the background of streaming and all that, I've got all the analytics on the background that tell me what it came from, what they're interacting with, computer, smartphone, and I started to see that a lot more of my interaction was smartphone. And so I sit there and I'd have them do their little stuff, unless we're doing a big project where they had to do, a PowerPoint presentation or something like that, that I'd gear it more towards the computer. Otherwise, it should be something that they can answer on the phone, because if it's easy for them to do, they're going to do it. And that's how you want to make the education easily accessible. But then I sat there and a couple were like, well, can we make a video for you? And I'm like, well, if you want to, but I just was looking for, and all of a sudden iMovie on the iPhones, we're churning out things that I'm sitting there going, this is almost commercial quality. And you guys did this with your iPhone. And they're like, yeah. And so they broke it down for me. And I'm sad they're graduating, because I'm like, I could have used you for sports next year, bud. So,
Well, and
but
I love that, because I think that that's something that a lot of teachers don't realize themselves, is that you've got a smartphone, you have a project in front of you, you're trying to teach students about it, shoot it with your smartphone, you've got iMovie on there, now you've got your B-roll, it's a beautiful 2, 3, 4, 5 minute clip, and it's now part of your course, and it didn't take you as much time as you thought. Using a professional video editing software, sure, you need to take a whole course on that. But using your smartphone with a built-in video editor, it's out there now, and so it's very easy for them to, on the flip side, for teachers to use that as well.
yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. You know what I found interesting too about phones, and some of the apps are more advanced than the desktop version.
Mm-hmm.
So like, for instance, we just played around, my daughter and I, we did a podcast during the pandemic, and the Anchor app has more features for editing than the actual desktop. So it's really interesting. Sorry to cut you off.
No, that's about what I was going to say, is that these a lot of times have that ability that even the desktop doesn't have, unless you're doing like Adobe and you're using Premiere Pro or things like that, which not every student's going to have access to. But like the Anchor app, and many ones that are free out there, just blows you away what they can do.
Yep.
Yeah, and we do have an upcoming presentation on the top 10 smartphone apps for educators. Again, in the future, we've got so much great stuff. In fact, here's one that I wanted to add to Drake, is that something they've all got their smartphones, and a great feature on there is speech to text. Students can speak faster than they can type, and they've got that feature on there. Is that something that you would encourage students to use for maybe blog posting, commenting, entering text into the chat room, things of that nature?
I would. It was one that I was hesitant at doing first, because I thought it was the easy way out, until I started grading some text speech in papers, and that got real interesting, because I had to literally grab my teenagers and go, decipher this. I have no clue what it says. And getting the speech to text, for one, it got that oratory that they were speaking it as well, not just typing it. So there was that extra layer of learning with it as well. And for me, I kind of sat there and said, well, maybe by them seeing what it's doing, seeing what it's saying, it'll help them when they have to type something out later down the future, because they'll have seen, well, the speech to text did it this way, I should do it this way. Because my first ones back when I left junior high, wow, those were, RU8. I'm like going, what? So, you know, it's the speech to text helps bridge that gap that a lot of them are used to shorthand on smartphones right now, and it gets them back to thinking, I guess normal text.
So it could be a little misleading because they're saying, well, the smartphone has it this way. And so there's definitely a need for an educator, a teacher in that form to say, hey, if it's clear that you use speech to text here, let's edit this. Let's make sure that you're not taking this at face value. But on the flip side, it's helping them get the content out of their brains. They're speaking it, like you said, there's that auditory level of it that helps. And I think teachers can even use this too. If you're on the go, you need to leave a comment, you can review what the speech to text said and make sure it's obviously accurate. Here's another one
for me.
Oh yeah, I use it all the time. That's why I love that tip. Here's one that I think deserves a moment, which is thinking about using a webcam. And then, we showed you with the document camera as well. I loved this analogy, Drake. Of course, I know you're really into RPG, tabletop gaming, and the whole tabletop world. It's so much fun. But if you could take a look at that, I didn't prepare a picture of this. It would have been a good idea. But if you see what's happening in tabletop gaming online, on Twitch and other things, on YouTube, and you see the camera angles that they're using to show a tabletop game, there's so many educators who have to show something. Your wife is a prime example, Julia, but others, whether it's a science project, it's a biology, it's chemistry, different things where you can actually show the things. It makes it so much better than a talking head and a PowerPoint. And so I think that it's good to have this vision of this is what the kids are seeing on YouTube with tabletop gaming. Clearly, we're not going to have 8 cameras and studio lights and everything like that. But is there something that is realistic with a document camera and a webcam used together with maybe a little bit of media, like we've talked about, pictures, video clips, B-roll, that could almost make this a really educational and fun to watch presentation?
Yeah, exactly. You hit the nail on the head with that as well. I mean, using the webcam, the doc cams, the B-roll, all that together, and having that very, just even, you don't need to be full production vMix even like I am. Even just OBS going from scene to scene to scene and stacking it is really going to touch with the students. And honestly, they're going to get a better view on some of the stuff than they did in the classroom. I know one thing that blew me away was when I used my doc cam in the presentation, it looked better than on my smart board in the classroom because no light, no light bleed, nothing like that. And the projector I'm using, hate to throw my school district under the bus, is about 10 years old, I want to say, and I think it's had light bulb changed twice. So it's one that just that high definition, high resolution, where the kids actually got it right up there with them, and you're interacting with the different cameras, bringing it in. It's going to engage them more because you are reaching out to them more.
I love it. And it's something that, again, we need to do a deep dive. What is OBS? What is vMix? How do we mix all this together? And it's something we will do, and we will release videos on that. And then finally, I threw this slide in because if it all seems like a lot, which it is, there is a product from XKeys that we've been playing around with that totally manages Zoom for you. Screen sharing, recording. Here it is right here. I've got it in front of me. I can show it to you guys. Now, maybe not every teacher is going to be able to get their school district to buy this for them, but I just wanted to show it off quickly. You've got a lot on your mind. And if we go back to that slide again, Mike, I love this picture, and I'm going to go to the next one too, of a possible work from home / teach from home setup where there's a cardboard box is the magic trick here. I'm guessing you have a laptop. I'm guessing you have a webcam, keyboard and mouse. There's a second monitor on a box that raises it up so that when you look at your students and you're looking at them on Zoom, you're making eye contact. And then when you glaze down at your work and your PowerPoint, it's a natural scenario there where it's all lined up in a line there. And that comes from Michael Hetherington, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, and I've got kind of a similar setup without turning my camera to, to see it all that. It's just it's one of those that, I saw some disconnect because I'd see some teachers and you know, I was always saying I don't want to overstep my bounds, but how much is your kid going to learn if you're talking to them like this through the whole presentation? So, it was one, find the sweet spot for your camera. The box was an awesome idea. I've got my 3 monitors set up like in a, rainbow fashion around me, but it's trial by error is what's going to help the online educator during this, and not to be afraid. If you think a box is going to do it, a box is going to do it.
I just wanted to show you when we first went to lockdown mode. This is just like a bin that I think we had toys in for my kids at one point. And just setting the laptop on here, I was able to raise the, just the perfect height. So these are so cheap, you can go to the dollar store, get something like that.
Well, we're just about at our full 1 hour, so I want to thank everybody for watching. I want to thank you, Drake and Julia, for joining me. This will be available on YouTube, so thank you both for being here. This has been so much fun. We covered so much. Drake, I really appreciate it.
Hey, my pleasure. I'm always here whenever you need me to call. I need to call.
Thank you so much.
Awesome job, Drake. Thank you. Thanks for having me again.
All right, everybody, that's it. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. It was so much fun. Take care. Bye.